Okay. Good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Today we're interviewing Kimberley Wallis. She's an achievement facilitator. She's used an eclectic approach, a really unique approach of neuroscience, and helps businesses and individuals fulfill their potential. We're going to explore what she does. So for those of you who are watching the stream who don't know me, because it's being streamed another broadcast too, my name's Petruzzi. I have a variable background in psychology. I've studied psychology to a point, neuroscience, I'm still studying it now, sports performance conditioning, and I'm known for writing books in NLP and hypnosis, and I've worked at sport at the highest level, and I work with businesses on radio, and I tour the world doing seminars. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell for those of you who don't know who I am, delivering for people on the other streams. Kimberley, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board today.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Fantastic. So tell us a bit about yourself, how you got into coaching.
Okay, so I didn't get into coaching until a later time. I've realized that in my environment or in school or friends or university that lots of people had, I would say, inner conflict with self-belief or reaching their goals or self-esteem and confidence or where they want to go in life. And I started to mentor at a very young age, very close friends of mine, people at school, people I meet in the street sometimes, and they would always leave me with a comment, "Oh, I feel good about myself now, I can go and do it, da da da." And then I'll meet them later on, and then they would remind me of what happened, etc. So I started to look deeper, more into it. So the brain, or how the mind works, really fascinated me from coming across all these paths in life. And that led me to studying neuroscience and then taking that to life coaching and guiding people.
And what sort of role does the neuroscience play in coaching people for you?
It just helps me to understand people's mental state, because sometimes if you don't have a background of how someone's mental state is operating, or how mechanically, I would say mechanically, or genetics that you mentioned before, and how sometimes drug abuse as well could affect the brain. So for me to understand how to be able to help them, I need to understand how the process of that, and by understanding I have to study it, and then while studying it, it helped me push through all, I would say, the information that I've gathered and the scientific base to be able to push them to reach where they want to reach and guide them in that sense.
Okay, that's really interesting stuff. And do you believe that people can change? I mean, obviously you wouldn't be doing what you do if you didn't believe that.
Of course, yeah. People can change, but it's a long process. It's not an overnight thing. It's similar to, I would bring it in simple terms, it's similar when you want to be fit or want to go to the gym. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a very long process, but you have to be patient. You have to put the work in, and you just have to have as well belief in yourself that you're gonna reach that goal. Otherwise, there's no point.
That's really interesting stuff, and I think the challenge is in change is. I think people can achieve a lot in a short time, but for sustained change, like you said, going to the gym, you've got to keep at it and keep working at it. Otherwise, especially with things like performance anxiety, say doing presentations, sports, doing interviews, under pressure you kind of go back to type again, which is really important to carry on working. So do you give your clients work to do when they sort of go away from you to do, or do you sort of see them? What's like a session generally involved with yourself?
A session generally involved, basically I will get to know my client in a very normal base, understand their inner psyche, understand their past, because most of the time it's their past that holds them back, something that happened to them at school, work, parenting, whatever it is. So I'll understand their inner psyche, psychological in every way, if they've been into drug abuse, alcoholism, how they communicate with their friends, their hobbies. Like I would basically try to understand them as a person in every aspect. And by doing so, it helps me to use these criteria and their benefit to push them and give them tasks to do and get them out of their comfort zone. Because that's something that people normally like to be in, the comfort zone, and they don't want to break that.
That's really interesting stuff, and I think that's quite fascinating what you do. And I think you've got the science base, the neuroscience base. Have you got a very good understanding of the mind and from an empirical point of view. I think that's really important. I think that for me, empirical studies are important to a point. I also think anecdote is okay. We can learn from people who've got better and improved. And certainly one of the modalities I teach and have learned NLP is based on modelling excellence. You sort of find what works, and which in one sense, it doesn't always work that way. It's not a panaceic model. It's just, you kind of choose what model you work with, whoever you're going to work with. For me, what I tend to do is I do like a biopsychosocial approach where I get people that I work with, okay, what's biological, what's psychological, what's sociological, and then I also send people to different professionals that might help them better than I can in a specific area. Let's say, for example, it might be anxiety. So if I get a client that sees me for anxiety, I'll say to them, Kimberley, you might want to go see the GP first. And say, why is that? It's because I'm not in biology. It could be a biological issue. It might not be. So hypnosis is big on pain relief, and I see a lot of clients for pain relief. And I would say, before I treat you for pain, see your GP first and do a battery of testing. I was doing a course one day to some chiropractors in Bournemouth, and I said I would suggest that if you have a client comes to you with pain, they see a GP first and do a battery of testing. And one guy says, why? I says, because if it's a tumour, you've got a big problem. So I always think, and when I teach courses, I say to people to stick to their remit in terms of you're a teacher, then use the skills to help the student learn. If you're a personal trainer, then use them. You're not a therapist, you're a personal trainer. Focus on the performance goals. And do you find that there's a fine line between clinical and performance coaching? Like, you mentioned before, people might open up about abuse and problems in the past. Is there a fine line?
Of course, there is a fine line, because like I said, if someone, let's say, had a traumatic experience when they're obviously younger, where there was drug abuse, alcohol abuse, etc., then that goes to the science base of like the operation of the brain. There's a chemical imbalance in there, so you will have to refer them as well to the right person. That's why I'll speak for myself, and my humble opinion, I think it's very important to understand the person's background and just take them and just as a client and be like, okay, I can help you. Because like you said, I respect that about you, the fact that you ask them questions and you refer them to the right person, because that's what a life coach should do.
I think so, and I think that's important because we can sort of take on more than I think it's more important to work with people and form a network of people. So it could be a nutritionist, and someone could have anxiety, for example. It might be a nutrition deficiency. It could be trauma to the brain. It could be an impact injury. It could be they suffered, and we know now that trauma manifests itself. So, for example, if between the ages of 0 and 7, the person didn't feel safe around anybody, had no safety, then you've got someone sort of teaching them mindfulness, and they're not going to get very far with mindfulness if they've been traumatized, because they've got nowhere to run, fight, flight, freeze. So you want to sort of build to that. And I think the thing is, there's been so many labels which are useful to a point. Diagnosis, I think, is something to work with. And you'll know the DCM manual, you've got a criteria, and we sort of talk off the record about psychiatry and psychology and diagnosis and so on and so forth. And it's a useful model to a point, but then you've got the person in general. So what it doesn't tell you that certain people might have a condition but not have those symptoms. But some people might have those symptoms, have another condition. But also you've got people who, on the other side of things too, need a balance in treatment. They might need to see a nutritionist. They might need some form of medication to control. But from a cognitive point of view, we can do so much. And from your point of view, what are some of the things that you, I know it's a broad area, but from a cognitive point of view, what are some of the things that you do with people to help them to change?
I'll just mention a case that happened because of what you were talking about earlier. So I had a client once, and they were complaining that they had no energy at all, and they were basically frustrated within themselves. I have no energy, I can't wake up in the morning, I can't go to the gym, I can't go to work, everything in my life is falling apart, etc. And I tried to understand her diet, and I went to diet-based energy levels, diet, sleep. That's what my intuition went with. So I asked her about her diet and her sleep pattern, and her diet was not the best. And for some reason, similar to yourself, I asked her to the doctors and have a blood test, and came out that she was just anemic. And
wow, yeah.
that's the only problem that she had. And as soon as
Yes.
she found out that she's anemic, she got the right supplements, and her energy level went up like never. And she's great, and I don't have to treat her for anything.
No, that's interesting stuff, and that's that's really important. And obviously each individual can have different things, and I think it's really important too. And I think that many years ago, when I used to work in care homes doing education, delivering education. A lot of the young people I used to work with had the labels, schizophrenia, Asperger's, autism, and it's hard because there's no biological diagnosis for things like autism. You sort of look at things behaviourally. We, in neuroscience, and we know obviously that there are MRI scans now that are showing, blood flow, and I've identified certain genes that could be it correlate. It's hard. I mean, causation's hard because obviously causation, one thing caused. All these things are like a cocktail, but there are, and I think technology is sort of catching up to to diagnosis, is sort of using things from that point of view. But from the point of view that one of the challenges I think is that when you have a label, someone has a label. So for example, you could have someone who has schizophrenia and they are a university professor, and you would never know. But then you've got somebody else who is in a secure unit under a lot of medication and care, and that's sort of one of the challenges I think in coaching, where sometimes people, they have a bit of knowledge and they like to think, with all good intentions, some people, they can sort the whole world out. And I've heard some claims that people make, and it's quite disturbing really, because you think, I'm not saying science-based is the be-all end-all, but I think ultimately sometimes certain people can be completely out of their depth with certain conditions, and
they can do more damage than they can do more harm than help. I've met or I've seen certain life coaches where they scream at their clients, etc., and they're frustrated with them, when really all they had was like chemical imbalance in the brain. They had bipolar, for example. They had like really bad anxiety, and it was anxiety disorder that needs a lot of work with, rather than screaming at, and you need to get out and do this and da da da. You can't work like that. And like I said, it's very important to have a background field, and if you don't, send them to the right person.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And I was doing a seminar one time in Scotland, I think it was, and I was delivering some components. And I was discussing anxiety, and one of the there was a personal trainer in the audience, and she said to me she had a client who had bipolar, and she said, what do you suggest I do on days she doesn't want to train? I said, do nothing. And she goes, what do you mean? You suggest I abandon her? I said, she goes, well, I call and motivate her. And I said, well, if you're going to call anybody, call a clinician, because you're not a psychiatrist, you're not a psychologist, and bipolar is fashionable in the sense that people sort of see. Some famous people say they've got, but they don't understand that some people with bipolar wake up in the morning, it's like the feeling of losing the whole family. And I said, if you're going to do anything, speak to a clinical supervisor first, because if she gets out of bed and she goes to training and she has an episode, where do you do then? She's very vulnerable. And I think that's really important, and I think that's where your approach is really unique. And I'm not saying everyone needs to have the base that you've got, but I think that's where it's really unique in the sense that it's important to have some foundation, to be able to administer some of the techniques in that respect. The other thing I was going to think is your working style. Describe how you mentioned the sort of people who scream and rant and rave. And describe your working style.
My working style is very sympathetic yet logical. It's not too emotional, because if you're too emotional and too sympathetic, you're not being logical with the person, and if you're too logical, you're not feeling their pain or whatever frustration they have. So for me, I think it's very important to have that balance in between. So my approach would be is why are they here? What is it they want to reach? And what is it they're frustrated with? And they would explain all these 3 points, and then I will ask them questions about their background, where they at the moment, and where they want to head. So my approach is very strategic. It's a plan of where they used to be, where they are, where they want to be, their past, their mental state. I as well ask questions about their diet, because I think that's really important as well. Their fitness level, their energy level, I think, is very important as well. So it's basically every level I'll ask about them, and I'll understand their dilemma, the process, their energy level, how they think, how they feel, and I'll just take it from there and make a strategic plan that works only for the individual. I don't have a plan that's what's the word? That's
so it's like more of a tailored approach. So
yeah,
and I think
so
it's important.
So I would work with individuals depending on them rather than just following a structure for everyone.
Yeah, so I think that's really important.
Yeah.
I work the same. I sort of tend to create a formulation based on the individual and the areas that I'm sort of covered that I'm sort of competent, then I'll deal with. The ones that I don't feel comfortable dealing with, I'll sort of refer to the appropriate person. And we sort of discussed, you do other stuff as well. You do the fitness, you do also the beauty pageant as well. Can you tell us a bit about the...
Yeah, so the beauty pageant was a coincidence. I was just in a Christmas market one time and someone approached me and asked me to join, and I don't like to be comfortable in my zone. I like challenges, whether it's something I'm knowledgeable about or don't have zero knowledge about. So I said, yeah, I agree, and I will put on a form, which I have, and I went through it, and I won the competition.
Wow, that's really good stuff.
Yeah, and I just took from there, and I went through another 3 competitions. One of them is Mrs. USA Bikini as well.
Okay.
And that was amazing for me because that pushed me to go farther within my fitness strategic. So I just love the transformation behind it.
And what's it feel like to compete in that area, that arena?
When I enter a competition, my mindset is not to compete with anyone, and that could be cheesy or cliche for some people, but I really don't. For me, I take things as an outgrowth for me. So when I enter something, I want to do something, I'll do it to the teeth. So when we have in the beauty pageant competitions, you have the gown round, and then the bikini round, and then you have the talent round. So I love dancing. I'm a professional dancer. I wanted to do salsa, so I hired a salsa teacher, and I took it really serious. Most competitors who entered the competition didn't do as much when it came to the talent. So that didn't really win them much points because some of them thought, just showing pretty, that's enough. But no, I believe if you put your all out there without being concerned about your competitors, you're more likely to win because that's your goal.
On the process, that's the big thing we talk about in sport for sure.
Yeah.
And do you get any nerves? Do you get any sort of? Do you sort of get jittery at all when you're
Of course. I would sometimes my heart would beat so fast, but then I would talk to myself and be like, you got this. You've been training. You've done this. Just go and do it. Just jump, and I'll just as soon as I'm out, all my fears are gone.
Yeah, no, definitely. You kind of sort of, go out there and sort of, so when you're in that sort of zone, that often you get yourself in that sort of zone. Where
Mentally, I would talk to myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like through self-talk. And then, and when you sort of get in that zone.
Visualization does wonders as well.
Okay, fantastic.
That's something very underrated.
Yeah, no, I think so too, definitely. And so once you're in there, you're competing, you're sort of oblivious to the world around you. It's just, things kind of slow down.
Yeah.
I can relate to that in sport where you kind of, you're just in that sort of zone, and even speaking. And do you find that from a personal point of view, do you find that it's like stepping into a different identity in one sense where, I do a lot of speaking now, and I've competed in sport as a coach at the highest level, and sometimes people say to me when they meet me in person, you're different to the person that is on stage. And it's like, you do acting as well, and you'll know that, do you sort of, I personally do when I'm sort of on stage, it's almost like I'm the same person, but I'm more extroverted. I'm probably naturally, if we sort of the big 5 personality model, I would probably be an introvert.
I am an introvert.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But I always say that every introvert has an extroverted tendency, and every extroverted has an introverted tendency.
Precisely, yeah.
Yeah. So as long that you're out there and you're expressing you're extroverted, then you're fine.
And I think that I can understand your approach where you sort of just you kind of dive in there and go into that process, which is key. And I think that's it's really interesting stuff, and for sure I think that sort of and so would you be able to sort of, I wouldn't necessarily give any advice, but any sort of tips on introverted people when they sort of got to go out and do an interview, or maybe they've got to sort of do a presentation, and there's a lot of correlations, but what are some things that you could sort of suggest the introvert does when they're sort of in a position with people around them and they've got to step into a...
Okay, I would say for an introvert to have an extrovert tendency, that's a skill.
Yeah.
So the more you practice it, the more you go out and the more you speak and you put yourself in positions where your heart is beating and you're sweating and you feel all the heat in the room and all eyes on you and you feel like you're going to panic, that's the moment where you just do it.
No, it's really interesting
So
stuff.
if you go to bars, speak to random strangers, even speaking to the waitress or the waiter, like little things, it adds a lot.
And do you
to
think
developing skill.
in the context of, say, like the Big Five, and I mean, when I was sort of doing dissertations at university in psychology and we're doing the Big Five, the emphasis was that if you were neurotic at, say, 15, you'd be neurotic at 50. If you were conscientious at 15, you'd be conscientious at 50. You might change it a little bit, but there was a strong consensus that, based on empirical research, that you pretty much, that was that. I mean, do you think you sort of maybe adapt some of these traits?
I wouldn't say you adapt. I think most of things, like for example confidence, most people think it's a trait when it's not, it's a skill. So there's lots in life that they're not traits, they're skills, and you can learn them if you put yourself in that position to learn them.
Yes.
But if you limit yourself in your comfort zone and you're happy with your friends that you've known since you were born and you're not like, socializing with other people, you're not really going to grow as a person or personality. So if you meet other people or put yourself in a position where you're not comfortable in your own skin, that's when you grow and that's when you develop a skill.
That's really interesting stuff. It's almost like, Piaget talks about the environment, the stimulus of the environment. And for sure, I think so. So you've got the person who is still living at home at 65 years of age. And I think sometimes that, there's a case for not doing things for people that they can do themselves, because you see certain parents with all the will in the world, and teachers and trainers and coaches, they mean well, but by doing it for the person, they exactly
that limits them. That's almost like that. I was it's a visual thing that I was experienced. I always think when people do so, it's almost like they're putting the handcuffs on the person, and slowly they blindfold them, and slowly they chain them to the chair, and that person can't, by the age of 30, 40, they can't go out anymore and they can't do things because you didn't push them. No, and per se push them, you don't have to be mean with it, but you have to allow them to take the initial step.
That's a really good point. I think getting that balance. So, for example, someone could be in a nursing home, for example, and they struggle to feed themselves. But if the person feeds them and they can do it themselves, it robs them of the independence.
Yes.
I think that's a really, really important point to make there.
Yeah.
And I'm not really a big believer in sink or swim, Kimberley. I think extend the comfort zone for me. I think push people as much as they can tolerate. I think there is a case for sink or swim in certain situations, but I think putting people under too much pressure, they tend to buckle. I think sort of extend it gradually as far as you can go. Say if they're afraid to present, and maybe just presenting in front of one person before they do 10, and just work at their own pace in certain situations.
That's why I mentioned before that working with the individual themselves, because every individual is different, and if some individuals have extreme cases where it's really hard for them. So once you understand that, you work with them in that level, and then you break it slowly to a scale where they get comfortable slowly with baby steps, then great.
Yeah, and that's really interesting stuff. And I know that some of these motivational seminars, I've been to many of them, and it makes good the stage when they sort of do something and someone sort of has this revelation. But the reality is that if they did an empirical study on that, it's probably likely the 1,000 people who went to the seminar, maybe one or two might have, and they're great seminars because they're very experiential. And they can it takes one idea in association, your behaviour change, to change some, to at least go on the course. But even some of the top motivational speakers, I like Tony Robbins' work. He's a great speaker.
He is
I went to his seminar for the first time at 17. I've been to several since then. But he doesn't make the claims. He does talk about you've got to keep working on it too. And I think sometimes people think they're going to go to an event 2 days, they're going to walk away transformed. And that can be the launching pad, I think. So sort of, that can be like a springboard, but then you've got to carry on doing it, because you don't eat one good meal and you're healthy forever. You don't do one training session and that sort of stuff too. But with interest really, because you do modelling, the beauty pageant, do the acting, and do you think that, in society these days, with social media being a big thing and all that sort of stuff, there is pressure on people? Now, I know this is sort of a contentious issue, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but, and I think, it's like, I don't think it's exclusive to girls, by the way. I think everyone sort of has, whether you're a man, child, whoever it is. I would say in my experience, if I was going to do a qualitative study, I would say probably young women are probably more conscientious about their appearance.
Yeah.
I think so, but that's just my own generalisation. I could be wrong, but men are too, and lads are too. But I would say more so. And they see people in the industry who almost look perfect in the sense that, you know, low body fat and the image, and there's an aspiration there.
Yeah.
There's a pressure on themselves, and
Yeah.
I mean, you know, what are your thoughts on that? People sort of pressurising themselves to be.
I think
It's not easy.
comparison is a disease.
Yeah.
And on its own, I really believe so. I think comparison should be under one,
Yeah.
like a disorder, because
It's a
once
good point. Yeah.
yes,
Might be the
because-
next DCM, maybe.
I believe so, because I
Yeah.
think once you start comparing yourself to someone, you straight away lost. Because you're comparing your ability to someone else's ability, and everyone is different, and everyone has different skills, different potential, and different, let's say, life path or mission in life, and different way of thinking. So once you do that, you've already lost. And I think with social media and TV shows and reality TV stars, etc., that doesn't help either, because even X Factor is all about judging, and all the shows that we have now, it's all about judging.
It
You're
is.
constantly judging. But once you take that out of your mindset and you're not judging and you focus on yourself and what you want to do, then that's not harmful. But it is happening in society because we're constantly judging each other and judging other people as well, and that doesn't really help.
I think so, and I think that one of the things is that, you know, the brain's not fully developed maturation-wise until 25. So the young teenager feels the emotion of the adult; they just can't process as well. So you got, you know, the young girl focusing on the magazine, you know, the glamour model, the young lad focusing on the people they see on TV, and they sort of, like he says, bridge that gap, and rather than you know, you run your own race.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
I think comparing is okay to a point. We learn, and I mean,
If you compare it in a
Yeah.
I would say, constructive way,
I think so. Yeah.
where it's not like in a shallow surface level, and where you understand as well. For example, this model that you see, and she has the perfect body, and she's you feel inferior. She makes you feel inferior.
Yeah.
You need to as well understand that she had to work so hard to reach
Yeah,
that
that's a
level.
good point for sure.
She's probably spending 4 or 5 times at the gym a week. She's probably in a very strict diet. She has that discipline. So rather than look at visual, understand how did that person get to that visual.
Yeah.
What's the process that they take? I want to learn from them. If you don't compare yourself to them, or you take them as an inspiration, then you've won. But once you compare, that's your loss straight away. But if you look, like I said, if you understand the dilemma behind how that person reached where they are, whether it's self-image, success, positioning in life, whatever it is, if you understand that they had to initiate lots of steps to reach where they are, then you've won, because then you can take the same steps and learn from
Yeah,
them.
and I think, say yourself, I mean, how important do you think it is? I mean, you do the beauty pageant, you do the acting, you do the fitness stuff as well, but you're also very well educated, and you've sort of taken time to educate and learn academically as well as in life, no doubt. How important do you think it is for people to learn and to learn new things, and sort of whether they go to uni or college or study? Is it really important, do you think, like learning?
I'll just put it in a very simple form, where if you had something like won the lottery or went and had a surgery to have a perfect body, or whatever it is that you've done to have a quick fix, it only lasts like this time, and once you fall back and you reach to the start zero where you started, you can never go back there, because that was a quick fix. But if you put the effort to learn, then you have a skill, and that skill is going to be for life.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Similar to when you were a kid and you're riding a bike. When you fall, you don't quit straight away. You keep learning how to ride the bike, and then you have a skill to ride that bike for life.
Yeah, and that's really important stuff. And certainly when I still work in football at the highest level, and still I work as a consultant now, I always tell the young players to make sure they do the education, no matter what the situation is. You know, not just rely, because a career could be short-lived. You get injured, you can get ill, but even if you don't, and even if from growth from a personal point of view, you know, find something you love to do and learn it. And so you've done the neuroscience, and that's phenomenal, because it's put you in good stead as a coach. You know, no, that's really good for you. And I think that you know, it sends a message out to the people that you know, it is important to a life learning journey, for sure. And sort of, as we sort of move towards the end of our interview, I'm just going to say what's next for you. You sort of do a lot of different things, and if you don't sort of mind me asking, where do you go from here in terms of your own career? Because you compartmentalize things, you know, really, really well.
Yeah.
So where do you sort of see your vision? Where does Kimberley go from here?
From here, so basically, I want to be able. I still haven't found the way yet, but this is why I asked about your vision as well.
Yeah.
I want to come with a technique where people can follow certain people or certain individuals to understand that life is not as what it seems. Everything that you see visual is not what it seems. There's a lot of work that's been put into, whether it's a building, whether it's someone's success, etc. Because I think we're living in a very fast movement society right now, where everyone in the world wants things really fast. I want to be rich really fast. I want to have this body really fast. I'm gonna, and then people buy into crazy diets that then doesn't actually work, because you have to put the work in and go to the gym. If you want to be successful, there's no fix, there's no quick fix, there's no, I'm going to buy this 60 steps or 20 steps and I'm going to be successful overnight. That's not going to happen. It's a long process to get where you want to get. So I really want to, I would say one of the things I really want to do at the moment is write a book about my experiences, about people that I've met in certain positions and they're not who they are in real life. And it was shocking.
Wow.
Some of them were quite disappointment, and some of them were actually more 10 times better in reality. And to understand as well, people don't have the answers for you. People can guide you, help you, and give you the tools. But people cannot transform your life. You'll have to do that work. And once you believe in yourself and you can do it, and you're willing to put the effort, then
That's really interesting stuff, and sort of resonates with me. And you know, certainly, I was having a conversation yesterday. Someone actually yesterday asked me the same question you asked as well, my vision and what coach you doing. It's quite a fascinating question.
I'd love if you could share it.
No, for sure. No, it's really interesting. And for me, you know, well, I guess I'm an existentialist in the sense that I believe life is hard. Life's not easy. You know, you go through a lot of challenges in life, and you know, I'm certainly no Pollyanna. I see life for what it is, and we go through a lot of things. And if you haven't been through things, you will do at some point. And I believe more in meaning, in the sense that the goal is important, but the meaning behind the goal. So existentialist being you make your own meaning rather than nihilistic, where nothing means anything anyway. You're in dangerous waters to become nihilistic. But the point being existential, you create your own meaning. So for me, in my journey, in my experience, my vision has sort of led me to a place where I'm probably moving more towards research, and some things I'd like to do is innovate or contribute towards innovative change. People who've got neurological conditions. But equally, I love doing work that I do in sport, in business, and I'm passionate about that. But I think on my own journey, evolutionary, I've experienced certain things and seen certain things, and you made a really good point there about people not being what you thought they were and some people being more. And I've seen that. I've seen the industry for so long.
It's very disappointing.
It is, and it's sort of those experiences sort of taken me to a place now where I think, you know what, I'm very privileged to learn from some of the best in the world, and I carry on learning from some of the best in the world in psychotherapy, in psychiatry, in neuroscience, in whatever. But the point being is that my vision is, definitely to sort of to be involved in research that can help people who've got neurological conditions to improve the quality of their life. And I think if I can do that, that'll mean a lot to me. As much as I enjoy doing the sport and everything else that I do, I think from the point of view of leaving a legacy behind, planting a tree for people who could sit under the tree in life, that would be the thing for me, really. But each to their own, and things can change all the time. But I think that through experiences we sculpt our reality to a point, and you go on your journey, and things materialize and go from there. So I just sort of move towards the end. Is there people sort of watching may want to get in touch with you? Have you got any sort of details that people can get?
Yeah, if you just Google me, it's Kimberley Wallis with L-E-Y in the end, and Wallis as in W-A-L-L-I-S. You will find me, and I'm very easy to access to.
Definitely. So people can sort of get in touch about anything that you've covered. So to see whatever they want to get you on board. And and sort of work with you in the capacity
Yeah.
that you can work with them, because you've got like, a great balance. And I think it's great what you do, because you sort of you walk, you talk too. I think that to go out there and sort of compete and do the things that you do,
Yeah.
you're out there, you're living it. You're not just sort of sitting down and saying this is the way.
No,
You're out there.
I think application is very important in
Yeah.
life. Like you cannot just give instruction without
Yeah.
applying it in your life.
I think so. It makes a lot of sense to
Yeah.
to be out there and do as well as speak as well. So it's really important stuff. So I really want to thank you for coming on board today. It's
Thank
been
you so much for
fantastic.
having me. It's been great.
Thank you very much.
It's great
Take care.
to meet you, John. Bye.